Thanks for having me. We're just going to run through a brief description of what happens or what used to happen here at the Toowoomba sale yards before the change in procedures. So obviously back 10 or 12 years ago, cattle coming out of a tick area into the clean area where we are here in Toowoomba would have to go through a plunge dip to be able to come to the sale yard. So and that's sort of changed over the years. Probably 6 to 8 years ago, it went to a system where the cattle come into the Toowoomba sale yards on a Sunday afternoon. Were inspected by a biosecurity officer from Queensland, and then went through our cattle sale on Monday and were plunge dipped out. That had a few dramas. Obviously, the Toowoomba region is a growing area, and a lot of our farmers now aren't full-time farmers. They're more what we would call hobby farmers. So most of them worked Monday till Friday, and the cattle always had to be booked in with the DAF office by Friday afternoon by 4 p.m. So quite often we get phone calls on the weekends to us wanting to send the cattle into Monday's sale, and we'd have a few dramas trying to get them tick inspected because obviously they weren't booked in. So going through a third-party provider, which is, they have two alternatives. They can either come in here still on a Sunday afternoon and get inspected here by a third-party provider, or they can actually get inspected on farm before they leave by a third-party provider. We're finding more and more of our clients are choosing to go to a third-party provider on farm. And there's a few reasons for this. The main reason is that if they do happen to come up ticky, they haven't left the farm and they're still there and are easy to retreat to clear to come to the clean country. So obviously if they come to the Toowoomba sale yards here on a Sunday afternoon and they're found to be ticky, we actually plunge dip them here on Sunday afternoon and then they return home first thing Monday morning. So we actually can't sell the cattle until they're clear of cattle ticks. And the regulation is that they do have to return to their place of origin. So with the third-party provider coming into play, it's made a huge difference to how our producers can sell their cattle. And it's a lot easier to market the cattle because we know the cattle are definitely going to be right when they get here to the yards. And it's a lot better for animal welfare as well. We're finding the cattle aren't getting yarded and handled nowhere near as much as they would before. So it's been a lot of work and ongoing work with the elders team here in Toowoomba and the DAF officers here in Toowoomba. We do have a great relationship with the guys here in Toowoomba, and they obviously still come to the sale yards and monitor the situation with the cattle ticks because where we are, I should have mentioned earlier, we're right on the boundary. So we have probably half of our region that we service is ticky and half of the other side of the west of the divide is tick free. So we operate out of both areas, which makes it rather difficult at times. So it's been rather welcomed by a lot of our producers that they can use a third-party provider, and it's made it a lot easier. We also run a lot of dairy sales, and obviously cows in full production, you don't want to be jumping through them through a plunge dip. So we can actually get them cleared before we have the sale on farm now. Every animal is weighed. They're treated with a pour-on that's got a nil withholding period, and we know that the cattle are right to go where they need to go as soon as the sale's over. So it's made it a lot easier for both ourselves here at Elders and also for the producers of the cattle, and also for the other end, the buyers of the cattle as well are a lot happier with the livestock when they're hitting the other end. So it's been a good partnership so far. Probably the only thing we really need to work on with the DAF officers here in Toowoomba is the information that people are getting about the pre-treatment they have to do. Obviously, all cattle have to be pre-treated before the third-party provider looks at them. And as I said earlier, we're in a region where there's so many hobby farmers and small farms, and they change hands quite often. So a lot of people buy the farm and think, oh yeah, I want to sell the cattle, we'll just send them in, and they're probably not understanding of the rules enough. And that's obviously a job of up to us and themselves to find out the information. But it's an ongoing process with us and DAF to make sure that we get that information to the people so they are treating the cattle accordingly. One thing we have noticed in a few areas, and we work closely with the DAF officers here in Toowoomba with this, is a few areas where the cattle ticks are very prevalent. We have noticed over the last 5 to 6 years there is a resistance to some of the chemicals that we are using. So that is closely monitored, and obviously as I said earlier, we work very closely with the DAF officers here in Toowoomba and the people with the livestock on the ground to make sure that we're monitoring that situation and using different chemicals at different times to work out the best scenario for those producers. So all in all, it's been good so far, and look, there's always things we need to work on and improve, but I think from where we were 5 to 6 years ago, where the system wasn't really working, we had lots of complaints, and you know, it was very tough going compared to what it is now. You know, it's pretty much a breeze these days to get cattle sorted to come over a tick line, as long as everyone understands their responsibilities, and I think that's the key message that everyone needs to understand. It's not only elders' responsibility; it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that all the requirements are met. And I think that's something that both companies like myself, where I work for with elders, and the biosecurity team can keep on top of. So, but that's pretty well it for what happens here in Toowoomba, how it's working here in town. Obviously, you know, we need to make sure that all the cattle that we do send over the tick line must have the necessary paperwork. They must be pre-treated. So it's working quite well. We are seeing at the start of the third-party providers, there was quite a few. We have seen a few of them drop off, so we probably need to get a few more third-party providers that we can use. That's probably something where we need to pick up on, but otherwise everything else is working pretty well. And as I said, we have a pretty good relationship with the local DAF office here, and with Biosecurity Queensland, which helps a lot.
Thank you, Darren. Really appreciate you taking the time out today to share that story. I think it's been a really practical example of where we can make a difference to empower people to act, and what difference that makes to small business and to producers. And you also shared a really good example there of how mutual trust, one of our key themes for this Partners Forum, is playing out with that ongoing process to get it right between yourselves and with us. This afternoon, yeah, no, thank you. That's great. So I know Darren is happy to stay on the line again for another 10, 15 minutes as well and answer any of those questions in the chat. We're going to move on now, though. So this afternoon, we've seen 3 different types of partnership approaches, successful outcomes, but also not without challenges. Before we move ahead and change direction, let's take a moment to reflect on the session so far. What are some of the key themes that have resonated with you through the presentations we've had this afternoon?